they're good.
What is that? An IPA?
It's a yeah.
Fine.
Oh, whatever.
Oh. All right, we're here with number would this be 26 or 27 of the Clint Esposito show.
So you don't know how the volume's going to be until...
No, it'll be fine. These mics are good. No, you should be fine too. You're right in between us. I don't know how much your cars are going to be. And that Harley guy.
Oh, that's cool. Background.
Oh. So I'm Clint. With me we got Chris Morena right here, and we got Johnny Wisner. Right?
That's correct.
Wisner?
Wisner. See?
I go by Wiser on the show.
Of your record of exceptional daring and the most versatile driver on the track, John Wisner.
What's your name? Like you put your mind announcements. Where I go, it's Morena.
The correct pronunciation is Wisner.
Wisner. Or if you're from California in the 60s, 70s, 80s, in the 80s?
80s on up.
80s on up, then he's Johnny Crasharama. Right?
Or Jumpin' Johnny.
Or Jumpin' Johnny. That's how I know him, by Jumpin' Johnny. That's what he said. But now he just showed us a magazine and he was Johnny Crasharama in a magazine. So
that's what the the guy that made the articles, he refers me to as Johnny Crasharama.
Did you start that or did he start that?
I called my show the Crasharama, my stunts.
What year? Starting what year?
82, what you saw on that paper.
And that was at the old yard?
No, I started doing them, I started doing them down at my yard, but I started putting the stencil on everything when I went to that. That was my first show I did for money on that paper in 1982.
This is in Sacramento, California?
I went to Petaluma to a speedway to do that particular dive bomber.
For that show. But you started doing your own shows.
I started doing them in 82 after I was off of the
street.
At the end of the street, and then I moved up to my house.
Not just
by
alone,
my house.
Bands.
Yeah, I know, but that's even crazier that he just shut down the street.
They were outlaw shows. The original ones had mostly people just on motorcycles, and there was fights and stuff like that. And then
Overcharge? You charge them?
Like were the
donation can.
Were the fights on purpose or?
People that got too drunk usually ended up getting their butts kicked by somebody else.
But it wasn't like for something for people to come and watch. It was just a side effect.
Right. It was just things that happened.
Got it.
During the show, like for instance, I was doing some crashes down there, and this one individual had a fifth of whiskey he was drinking, and he got a little bit too drunk, and another guy kept saying, "Stay away from the cars," and he didn't, so the guy shoved him, and then he smarted off to him, so he got a real bad ass kicking.
Between crashes. What's happening?
Between crashes. And then the guy went over to his car. He was going to get a gun out, so the other individual went over and knocked him out and took his keys, and at the time there was a prison yard next door, threw the guy's car keys into the prison yard, which in turn brought the police out, and the show was stopped.
No more crashes.
For that day.
Yeah,
for that particular event.
Yeah.
So is that how you got into were you already doing car stunts by then?
I had already been on auto thrill shows for 10 years.
So you started in the 70s?
I started in 1972 on the King Kovaz Auto Daredevils out of Florida.
Okay. And you were from California?
Yes.
And you just jumped on with them when they came through California?
No, they didn't come through California. That's kind of an interesting story. I went to the thrill show at the State Fair in Sacramento when I was a kid, and I wasn't really interested in the hell driving, precision movement, or the two-wheel driving or anything. I liked the rollovers. I just loved to watch the cars. They had a rollover contest. They'd have the old 1950 DeSotos and stuff, and they would roll them over and over. Each guy would probably roll it 5 or 6 times before it would be demolished, and I always thought that was cool. And I also wanted to be a racing driver. So I started to build a race car in high school, and I ran out of money, and I couldn't complete that. And I ended up working on carnivals for a couple of years out of high school when I was 18, 19, and 20. And when I was 20, I decided I'm going to load my car up and go back east and look for a thrill show to join. And so I loaded up my 58 Mercury, and I took off. My friend Henry, one of my best friends, rode with me from Sacramento to Mustang Ranch in Nevada, which was a house of ill repute, and he bought me a date there, and then he hitchhiked home, and I headed east from there in the Mercury. And
that's a good friend.
Yes. And so I would run out of money. I was sleeping in the car, and so I'd stop where I saw a fair operating or something, and I'd work a day or something on a ride, and then I'd get a little money that night, and I'd move on. And I think I came out as far as Indianapolis. I did go to the museum at the Speedway, I remember. And I found out somehow there was going to be a thrill show in Lincoln, Nebraska at the State Fair. So I headed back to Lincoln, Nebraska, and I got there. It's going to be a 2-week fair, and the thrill show was on the last day of the fair. And I was there about a week before the fair even came to town or even opened. So there was a little amusement park at the back of the fairgrounds. The guy had some real old junky rides. And so I worked there at night. I run the Tilt-A-Whirl, the bumper cars, and this antique ride called the Moon Rocket, which was a forerunner of the Flying Bobs or the Himalaya, but real old.
They just gave you cocaine.
No. And the guy gave me $5 a night to run the rides. So I did that, and I slept in my car outside the little amusement park till the fair opened, or the fair started coming in. And then a couple of fellas had a ride. I think they were out of Florida. They were putting a carnival ride up, so I got a job helping them set the ride up. It was called the Flying Scooter. You don't see many of those anymore either, of course. And when the ride was put together, the only job I could find, I sold tickets in a ticket box in front of it for 14 days for $7 a day. I sat in there for like 14 hours a day, right across from 3 side shows. So I had to hear the Gorilla Woman 24/7.
Is that right?
And the last day of the fair, the Auto Daredevils were performing in the afternoon. Well, I had to sell tickets, so I couldn't go see the show, but I took a break as soon as the show was over, and I went over there, and Walter King Kovaz, he was the boss. I saw him, I found him, and I said, well, I want a job. I want to go with you guys. And
how old are you, 18?
I'm 20 then.
Oh, okay.
And he goes, well, how old are you? And I said, I'm 20. He says, well, you got to be 21. So he gave me a program, and he said, if you're really interested, you call me this winter. So when I got home, I called him from California to Florida, and he hired me over the phone, and he kept sending me letters. You're going to show up, right? You're going to show up. Because I had to be there in April, I think.
Where?
In Florida.
Okay.
And I had never been on an airplane or anything yet, and I lived in Sacramento, California. And so it came April, and I bought me a plane ticket, and they said, when you get off the airplane, look for a car with Auto Daredevils on the side, and somebody will be there to pick you up. So that's how I started on thrill shows.
And what'd you do?
The first stunt I did was the 7-man.
Right off the bat, you got stunts?
Huh?
Right off of the bat, you did stunts?
Within a week, I'd say. I started doing the 7-man leap on the motorcycle, where you'd have a ramp that was only up a block high, and you'd lay 7 guys out there, and you'd jump over the men laying down.
Were you jumping? Or you laid down on the...
No, they had me ride the motorcycle. I started jumping over the men for the 7-man leap.
Did you first lay down as one of the men?
Maybe for a week or something.
Okay.
And I remember the first time I got on the motorcycle because I told him, oh, I know how to ride dirt bikes and everything. And I rode right into a puddle of mud and fell down immediately on the motorcycle. And it was, it looked like a Triumph, but it was actually old 250 Allstate, Sears Allstate with a Triumph tank on it and a piece of car upholstery on it for a seat. They also used it to do the firewall.
Perfect.
So, and then the next stunt I started doing was, I think it was the iron chest routine, where you put a board down. It's about 4 foot long, and it's staked down on one end, and then you're the block, and the pickup, the front wheels go over the pickup, and then the rear wheels go over.
I was short, so they let me. I did it because the other wheels weren't running over my feet.
They called it the indestructible man, or the iron chest routine. Is what
How wide is the board that they?
The board was probably 2 foot wide, because you had to make sure it was below your rib cage and above your kneecaps, or it'd snap your knees or your ribs. It would basically it could kill you.
But it didn't do much. I mean, the pad was,
the pad
but
wasn't
it was
much.
about the spikes. You had to really.
So you had to know where to position it, because I remember hearing some college kids trying it. They saw it probably at a thrill show, and the guy died because it crushed his chest. So,
you guys probably had like old, real heavy cars.
Well, they used the pickup truck that they jumped. It was a brand new 72 Dodge long bed pickup. Yeah.
A real truck.
But they could actually do that with a. They could do that with a 1.5 ton truck even.
With a Toyota Tundra? No, not the Tundra. With a T100 back then, maybe.
Yeah, when I was running over Jim. Yeah. And then about 3 weeks, I was supposed to start doing the slide for life, and I had the pad on and everything, and one guy tried it, and then something happened, and we had to leave right away, and I never did the slide. I had the pad on and everything, and it was going to be my turn next, and nothing happened, and we traveled from Florida clear out to California and then came back to the Midwest. So when we got out to California, which was about 3 weeks after I started, they let me roll my first car. So 1972, and I rolled about a 1961 Falcon.
Remember this? You remember what car you rolled?
It's on my card even. That's my first rollover on my business card.
I have a clue.
And
any of those cars worth money now?
That's impressive.
All of them were worth money that we crashed in 72.
Oh, yeah.
Because they were all either in the real early 60s or the 50s or even some 40s still.
Yeah.
And I remember I rolled the car wheel to wheel, and the linkage fell off the tranny, so I only did one wheel to wheel, but I did make it wheel to wheel, and they said, oh, duck your head over, but I think I had my head on the ceiling when it went over.
You got a concussion.
And then we went to San Jose, and I rolled a 59 Rambler American. And I remember I got a 1.5, and I was laughing. I was upside down in the car, and I was laughing when they came over there because I thought it was, my old red helmet, no goggles.
Okay. Short sleeves. We did.
I don't know whether we had, we did have short sleeves.
They didn't no sleeves, bro. He was wearing a tank top.
Uh-oh, he likes it.
I rode dirt bikes in tank tops for a long time.
Is that right? They used to do fire stunts with short sleeves. Gloves.
I burnt myself real bad at Columbus. Second and third degree burns.
Get out of here, B.
And then
the B loves truly.
The third car, we got a lot of dead sticks, cars that didn't run for rollovers. So we called them dead sticks, and we had a van with a push bumper on it, like the pickup we have now.
Didn't you guys do that once?
Always. That was your backup plan. If the car didn't run, even if it didn't run to jump it, back then it was Johnny or Tony Peterson would push you in the push bumper. Back then, I mean, you were doing it when I joined in 96, 97, 98, it was somebody else pushing them, but and you had no control, you just had to steer. I mean, and again, you didn't have any power steering, so to roll the car, I mean, you didn't have any power steering at all anyway, but with us in 96, if you had no power, you had to crank it at the top of the ramp, and you're getting a good push from whoever's behind you. So we're kind of you got to just make sure you roll it over, because if you didn't if you went off the ramp and you didn't twist the wheel, you're back on all fours, and now you're going towards the infield, you know, and it wasn't pretty. So you wanted to roll it just to stop the momentum, really.
The third car I rolled was a dead stick, and it was in Merced, California. In fact,
I never heard that saying, though, dead stick.
Dead stick, and it was a 54 Buick Super 4-door sedan, and I was kind of nervous because I thought, oh, I got to get this car over. And I remember Billy Little, who was the star driver on that show, he said I was still cranking on that wheel when it was upside down. He said to make sure I got it over, and I think I made 2 rollovers with it, wheel to wheel, and then they pushed me in again. I did another wheel to wheel with it, and that was a 54 Buick, great big car.
Nice.
But
we safe in those things.
Huh?
So you were safe in those things.
Oh yeah, they didn't crush down at all. The hard tops would, though. You'd get the big,
the 2-door,
like 64 Pontiacs. If it was a hard top, they'd just crush down on you.
Oh yeah.
But you know, you just leaned over and you kind of let the roof push you down with it on the seat.
If you want to know what cars are good for accidents, ask these guys, because they've
Ford Taurus
crashed.
Man, Ford Tauruses were like beater cars. You would get them in the way they're shaped. Had to be, I guess, early 90s models. The fact that I was rolling in late 90s, but they were just a crown, you know, and it was just kind of the momentum. It took them and it hopped, and it wasn't a hard hit, you know. But I mean,
what's your favorite car to crash?
The 2-door Toyota sucked.
Well, the one on that newspaper that I'm jumping in 1982, that was like a 66 Oldsmobile.
Yeah.
And I was doing a 50-foot dive bomber. I made some ramps. The guy that I had to do a job for, he didn't want one off 2 or 3 blocks high. He wanted me to, so I made these steel irons that had a pitch, and it got the car up pretty high. So I tested them out on my street first. I think I went 75 feet on that jump in a 62 Impala. And
how high would you say?
I think the one at my house, I could probably up close to the top of that diesel over there.
Come on, like 10, 11 feet?
Yeah, in the 62 Chevy. It was up there.
Shit. Ramp to ramp, or you just landed?
No, I dive bomber crash, landing in junkers.
Okay, yeah.
But I went 75 feet because the speedometer didn't work in the car, so I remember taking one out of another old big car, and I wired it underneath the dashboard, and I was using that for a speedometer, so I don't know how accurate it was, because I went farther than I...
Obviously not very accurate.
Huh?
Obviously not very accurate.
I thought I wasn't going to go quite... I thought I was going to hit the second car, and I hit the third car, but it stuck right in the windshield, I remember, because it felt like it wanted to drive me into the steering wheel, but it didn't, because I was fairly strong then. But...
So these ramps we have for the ramp to ramp, they were Kochman ramps originally?
I think some of that metal on them was part of the ramp to ramp jump still.
The measurements on them, you think?
Yeah, that's the same.
Okay.
Same as the Kochman jump. But the receiver was a big wooden one, and it was a different pitch. So I had to figure out what to do this trailer at when I started jumping the old car. And the first time I jumped it, I didn't have as much incline on it, and it was a different speed. And then I went to try a bigger, I jumped a 87 Ford long bed F-150 pickup before I jumped the old Dodge here, because I didn't, and I came in the same speed as I did before I changed the incline. I barely made it on the safety. I mean, I didn't have a foot to spare, and I landed on the safety way, and it was just a temporary one. It went flying off. Yeah. And everybody thought that was watching it. There was just a few personal friends watching it, and they said, "Oh, that was such a nice jump." And I said, "No, it wasn't." I said, "I almost ate it right there." Yeah. So then I changed the speed. I added another, I think, 3 miles an hour, which I jump Lucy at now, and that was what I needed.
So he jumps this as a 38?
37.
37 Dodge?
But there's not really a model. It's just a Dodge.
Yeah, it's just a Dodge 4-door sedan. I don't think there's a... Just a Dodge.
So this trailer that it's sitting on is the landing ramp, and then the stuff up on the front of there is the takeoff ramp. And he actually jumps 40 feet onto this trailer, which, as you can see, is not that much wider than the car itself. There's like a foot and a half maybe on each side.
Yeah, I think the car's 6 foot wide and the trailer's
8
foot wide, so something like that.
And how fast do you go?
Huh?
How fast do you go?
Well, I go over 40.
I
I don't tell the exact speed.
Over 40. And let me tell you, last year he came over the curb or the like cushion on the track and was just skidding out and just kept her.
Oh, I had to go out on that old track to come into the smaller track.
Yeah, and you like came down and you were like, I was like, holy shit.
On the track, it was fast.
Yeah, and he's throwing all the dust up.
And it just makes a noise. It makes, I mean, you don't need any pyro.
And the thing is totally stock, the car is. That's just how it came.
Yeah, original suspension still. I put heavy duty shocks on it when I started jumping it. That's the only thing I did to the suspension.
Now, so about the backup, you have another car at home in Sacramento.
That's a 38 Plymouth.
38 Plymouth. Did you test it with that one?
I was going to jump it one day, but you know, that car is licensed and insured. You could actually drive it on the street.
Painted up, black
it's painted up just like this. Looks good. And it's a real pretty cherry body.
Cool, yeah.
So I decided
to the store to try to get chicks.
Huh?
You take it to the diner to try
I
to
haven't
get chicks,
driven it in a year or so. It's licensed right now, though. No.
You should.
It has an exhaust like this with no muffler, so it's a little loud. Yeah, milk and eggs. It's out at Bloom's garage right now.
That one as well. That's pretty neat. I've seen photos of it. Yeah, I knew it was pristine.
That's even a little fancier paint job, because he put stuff on the front fenders like rabbit's foot and a 4-leaf clover and horseshoe and
something to do with pristine cars in thrill shows, though, that it's good, but they tell a story that it's a little bit bumped up. Our bumpers, I'm looking off camera, but our bumpers are scraped up from bumper to bumper driving. They could be repainted. I mean, nothing is damaged on these cars. They've been used for a few years and quite a bit of shows, but the fact that, you know, they might have little dents here and there, and things happen in stunt shows.
This thing's got some...
It's got good story, yeah.
Well, originally I built this car to jump through the battering ram, and that's what beat it all up. Except I did have a bad jump, and that did damage the car. I had the throttle stick up there at Massachusetts and Seekonk, and instead of 40 feet, I ended up going 86 feet before I landed, and I was clear over the receiving ramp, and I nosedived into the asphalt, and that's why there's no front bumper on it. The bumper went flying off with the brackets and everything, and
better long than short, though, huh?
The wheels were like that, towed out. Even that bumper horn that this helmet's hanging on is bent from it coming back down on the rear end like that.
Is that why you put the helmet on there?
Yeah. That's really the only bad jump I've had with, and it turned out it was a real small bank track. It wasn't a track I would ever try to jump this car on again, because I had to stay way up by the wall, and the inside of the right rear tire is all scraped because I could hear the tires scraping on the frame when I was in the turn. It was so tight. And luckily, I thought it was going to flip over when I hit, and luckily it didn't. Because I thought that was the end of the car.
One eye's looking at the wall, and then for me, one eye's looking at the speed, and your third eye is looking at the ramp. Because you got so much going on sometimes at speedways to do a jump.
And that's it. I couldn't watch my speedometer because I was only that far away from the concrete wall.
And then you look up, and there's the ramp, and you're looking at your speed, and you want to let off, then you want to give a throttle.
But it turned out the reason I was practicing going around the track that day, and the engine kept revving up on me, and I put another spring on the throttle, but actually what was wrong was the front motor mount was rotted away, and the motor was shifting in the turn and making the throttle go faster, so I really didn't have any control over the throttle.
Then once the
And once I got in the air, I thought, oh, this isn't good.
So when you landed, was it pinned or what?
Huh?
When you landed?
I landed at about a 45-degree angle
was it still
into
the
the
gas still on?
asphalt. Huh?
Was gas still on? Like where it let off of the gas? Because you weren't turning anymore?
Pedal, but the throttle was
I just probably had my foot where I usually just stay right on the pedal when I'm in the air, you know.
Yeah, but it wasn't still stuck when you landed?
No. I was straight then, but, you know, I thought the car was going to go end over end, actually, because it was way up like that, and I'm going, oh, this isn't going to be good.
Yeah, and there's no cage in that.
No. Just a lap belt out of a race car.
Fancy stuff. What's wrong with you? Not in this. Should we talk about how we just drove 6 hours and then did this?
Sure.
So excuse us if we're working close.
Today is
just left the winter quarters, really.
Well, so today is Tuesday. Chris picked me up Sunday at 3 o'clock
in Jersey.
We drove to Binghamton, New York, basically. Dropped off his 2-wheel truck. Then drove what?
The truck, an empty trailer, drove to Cumberland, Ohio.
No, well, we drove to here, Williamsport, Pennsylvania.
Yep.
Slept here.
Saw the Little
League didn't get to see the Little League Hall of Fame, though.
Oh, we'll see it tomorrow, the Little League field. Yeah, the outside.
And
funny we ended up here again.
And then
for the night, drove the next day, Cumberland.
Went to Cumberland, Ohio. Picked up the other cars and then drove back. We're in Williamsport now.
Yep.
Having Trulies in the parking lot of. Is this the same hotel we were in?
No, not at all.
You drove to the same town and then went to a different hotel?
Yeah, because maybe the parking lot, it can hold more vehicles. They had a cot. They had a cot for the third person. Cramming in a room. That's what you do for now. And then once you start making money and having shows, maybe we can have our own rooms. This isn't SAG, you know, so deal with it. I get first shower in the morning, by the way.
I've never been SAG, even when I did commercial stuff or whatever. It was never. I never
treated you good on the road. I mean, if you did bike shows, your promoter or you might put yourself up. I mean, listen, even with my guys, we would share rooms. I mean, it's not like, you know, usually you're not even at the hotel much.
Yeah, I would put us up.
Setting up ramps. You're prepping for the show.
The same guys, just riding back and forth.
For sure. Looks good, though.
When I was on the Kochman Hell Drivers show, I slept in the Dodge Hotel most of the time, which was the pickup on top of the car carrier.
Nice.
Because I drove the car carrier and there was no sleeper on it.
I've done when you're driving
the
car carrier.
So I slept in the pickup.
There were times we didn't have air conditioning in the bunkhouse. And I remember we would kind of scatter and find cars, unbeknownst to Charlie Belknap, because we were using his gas at night to have air conditioning on the car carrier because the bunkhouse was so hot. Or we would just
it was.
Yeah. Here it comes again.
I told you. Oh, it's a different guy.
Totally different. Get louder. It's a great day for a ride, though. You can't blame these guys.
Yes, I can.
But yeah, actually, you know, it's funny now that people complain about, I got to share a room or something. But that's, you put the seat down, right, and just hung out, and that's what you did in the show. It's not like we had bunk beds and stuff. So
I took naps in the Toyotas during the day.
You drove the bunkhouse. Oh no, you drove the.
I drove the bunkhouse the first few till Dick Langdon
Rick Snifton
quit.
Follow you. I know Rick Snifton was trying to follow you.
Oh yeah, in the bunkhouse because he
can't lose you.
Snivelled about everything.
I heard. I was in there that year. That was like '94. Andy will remember again. We'll have to do this again with Andy and tell those stories. But that's cool that you did that, and then you also slept in the berth, the sleeper berth back then, or you slept?
No, I slept. I started sleeping in the sleeper when he got some Volvo tractors, because the other one, the tractors he had first were some old GMC Astro cabs, and they were a mess. The air conditionings didn't work, so I slept in the bunkhouse.
So the cab overs. I drove the same Volvos later on.
Yeah, the Volvos had nice air conditioning. I started staying in the truck then, but
staying in a treehouse, like a ladder to get.
Yeah, before then, I stayed in the bunkhouse because the Astro cabs, they weren't even comfortable to drive.
Yeah. And they weren't even from another show. Did Charlie get them from?
No, those came from when we when I worked for Jack Kochman and we had the Newport cigarette show. He bought those Astra cabs.
That's the story. The cigarette show. They had cigarettes to kind of like right.
In 1988, we had Newport cigarettes.
Did you guys hand out cigarettes?
Yeah, we had samplers that traveled with us, and they gave away little 10 packs of Newports.
Nice.
You know, because we'd go to the Richmond State Fair and a lot of big fairs.
Right?
Huh?
You had Newport cars?
Newport cars.
Yeah. Bro.
Newport T-shirts, alive with pleasure.
Right now. We need a picture of one of those Newport cars. I guarantee you somebody will copy it.
I just gave Andy a Newport banner from '88. Hollywood Stunt World, it was called. Newport Hollywood Stunt World.
That's awesome.
I still have my uniforms. They're white and green.
Who would you want to be sponsored by now? Right now, if you were sponsored by, not a car manufacturer, just, I don't know, I mean, an ice cream store or something, you want like Carvel, or would you want to be sponsored by Nike?
Jeez, yeah, probably something like Nike or something. Now you can't be sponsored by cigarettes anymore.
No, I guess not. I can't give
Sure we
away.
can.
Subway?
Well, even on the Kochman show in the 70s.
I think you're a pedophile if you're involved with Subway in any way.
Jared effed that up. That's true, man. That's sad that that's synonymous.
Yeah, as soon as I see somebody's involved with Subway, I'm like, they diddle kids.
That sucks.
In the 70s on the Kochman show, first we were Winston cigarettes. They had the two-wheel ski cars painted up with Winston on them and everything. And then we changed to Camel cigarettes because I think R.J. Reynolds owned both cigarette companies or both brands.
Right.
So I think in 1980 I have Camel uniforms that say Camel on the side, and then they say Kochman L drivers on the back, embroidered on brown uniforms for Camel.
They sponsored Camel Supercross when I started watching. Right. Yeah, like 1990, it was Camel Supercross.
It's so funny. That's neat.
And then Kochman also had a Beech Nut Chewing Tobacco sponsor for '87.
Awesome.
That was John Anderson managed that.
There's programs out there, right? That seem memorabilia on that, of course.
Yeah.
And then, but Dodge with Kochman was Dodge.
Kochman was always Dodge since the '40s.
And it was a good sponsorship. Like it was.
Yeah, he had as many as 4 units at one time, and he got cars, diesel trucks.
That's a nice car.
Thank you. Yeah, he'd get diesel trucks, vans, pickups, cars for the show.
Okay, yeah.
All kinds of. He'd get like 100 vehicles a year. He'd get.
Drive them but even off season, some of the stunt guys would have it off. Did you earn?
Yeah,
years you would get.
The top drivers would get a car to take home with them and
when you
stuff.
say home, would it be the same state? What if you traveled like?
Well, they wouldn't probably give one to me ever, but I wasn't the favorite on the show when I was on Kochman's show anyway. But like Tony and Pete Gross,
sure, they are.
The top drivers had cars or vans all the year round.
Earned it as well.
Jerry Lackey had a car. I think even Larry Kramer got to take a van home one year, but then when he brought it back, kind of crashed up in the fender and everything. I don't think they let him take it home anymore.
Dang it. Get in there.
Is that Kramer's dad?
Yeah, his dad was the clown on the Kochman show when I was on there. He was Happy the Clown. And he was happy all the time.
Any reason? Any reason? Any reason he was so happy?
The reason he was happy is because he was high. There's no two ways about it.
That's just the decade, I guess.
And he was that way during the show too. But he was an excellent clown. But
he did, right? The stories were phenomenal just to hear them. I definitely was born too late to be a part of it. All this stuff. Joined way too late.
They used to go to Mexico or some
one of those.
Yeah, might as well. If you see one,
I saw one.
Some of the Kochman guys would go to Mexico or some other country in the winter, almost every winter. I did go to Mexico one winter on the Kovaz show, in 1973, we went down to Mexico. We were supposed to be there all winter, and we were probably down there a month and a half, and something, I don't think they were paying Kovaz, and we pulled out of there. But we were playing real poverty towns.
Promoter.
And there isn't racetracks down in Mexico, or back in 73. We played basically on baseball diamonds.
Wow.
So we'd have the first ramp on third base, and then you'd turn on home plate, and the second ramp would be on first base.
Wow.
Sucks. I did it. You weren't there the year. You did 96, 97 with me, not 98.
Yeah.
Crash was there 98, and in Iowa. We were in Iowa. Serge Beaulieu got hurt on a baseball diamond. I remember that whole deal. They had a helicopter come and circle it with lights and whatnot, but I wasn't stunt driving at the time, but I mean, it was hectic, but you made it work, I guess. But the motorcycles were kind of, better than me. I did the slide for life and the Autobats and the perch, but man, it was just slick. Especially with the dew. When you used to play on grass and the dew would pick up in the afternoon.
Okay, slide for life, like evening time. Dew was always our nemesis as well.
On the ramps.
On ramps, yeah. As soon as it became, like it started to become dusk, that's it. You'd start to get a bunch of dew. But so slide for life is where we'll find some footage. I'll put some in here. You have a leather pad on your butt, basically, and you hang off the back of a car, and then you slide through a fire on your butt.
That's what this is, yes. Slide for life can be several stunts in live shows, but with the Auto Thrill Show, exactly right. You go up to like 70, 80 miles an hour we did at the Red Mile.
Yeah, and olden days they would call it the suicide.
Kentucky was a mile, and I would drop off the back of Johnny's car.
Yeah, I think 80 miles. Yeah.
And I mean, the leather pad hasn't changed in how many decades?
I
don't think it's ever
changed.
It's a leather pad. It's kind of keeping with tradition. But you put your feet down, and if you're doing 80, you're breaking some things, so.
Because you're gonna.
And I think Chris is one of the best ones I've ever seen do the slide. No, I'm not saying that because you're here. Because
I did it a bunch though.
If you didn't, I'd say you stunk. But Chris would slide and then stand up before he'd come to a complete stop.
And take my helmet off.
And take the helmet off before he actually come to a dead stop, and nobody else would do that. They'd stop and then they'd get up and.
Yeah, sure. No, it was more nimble back then, but no, it worked out. It was more of a showman type thing if I was able to do it, right? You would just kind of wave.
I think that's changed with shows, right? The presentation, yeah, exactly, of the people in shows a lot.
Get out of cars back in the day. They would get out, the car would keep rolling, the doors are open. They were. It was.
Some of them would put one leg out before they.
It was impressive. You're right.
I feel like all that stuff, even like freestyle, like they try to promote it by being like, for X fighters, you get points for celebrating or whatever after your thing because they want people to do that. Yeah, but it's still like
they downplay it.
Like I would hate to have to do that.
I know. I get it. It's like scoring a touchdown.
Did you used to bow and stuff?
Huh?
Did you ever bow?
No, I didn't bow.
What was your move?
I'd just go like that.
You would, so you would not the double wave.
Yeah, I just do one like that.
You do a left side because the other side was.
Well, I'm left-handed anyway, but
okay, that's good. It's the other side too.
And I've noticed when I had a crew a few years ago of younger people, they're not the same anymore. Their egos are bigger than what they learn before they learn it, and it ruins them right away.
That just used to be bike guys.
It's a lot of times, dude. They get into a couple shows, right, and then all of a sudden they
sign
think,
a couple autographs.
Oh,
yeah. I remember when I started, we had programs back then. You always had somebody selling programs, and you had your. I even had my picture in the program the first year I was on the show.
Programs.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I got in some programs
and
motorcycle programs.
I remember I didn't even care about signing. I signed very few on the Kovaz show. I was more interested in and I didn't even.
Right, you wanted to clean up.
Well, no, I didn't even. We had to load up. The Kovaz show was real strict.
Yeah.
compared to the Kochman show.
Or Charlie's show. Charlie, because you wanted to push the material out, meaning like, the booth was set up, sell some shirts. But if we had a big jump that night, 3 states away, the guys were thinking, let's load this stuff up. We want to clean up and be on the road.
Yeah.
But you had to have, the 20 minutes to obviously meet and greet, which was the best part, and you would sign away. Problem was, you would have those stragglers. You might, this is in my thinking, starting out, that would milk it, and they saw the other guys walk away and start to load up and lift ramps and get dirty, cleaning up, and you're already tired from doing the show. But they would stay there waiting for other people.
Oh, and hang out with the fans. Hang out with the fans.
It was always like the first couple of years. They were never like a seniority type of guy. They would just wait while everyone else loaded up and just had it going, man. But it was about selling the T-shirts or the keychains back then or whatnot. But
Kovaz's wife would sell the programs, so
I was jealous because Johnny, you were doing a car carrier back then, and you were kind of off the scene. Meaning you had you get 6 cars to load.
Yeah, I wanted to get loaded up.
Exactly. And
right.
You had it down to a science, and there was another 5, 6 guys on the track with a trailer, and you had to coordinate with everybody, putting the ramps and block-ins. In fact, this was back when we had the bunkhouse was in the front, and then
the ramps went in the back of the bunkhouse.
Toyota pickup. Yeah. And it would take we didn't have a trailer, meaning on the track you didn't pull.
Right. Even when I was there with you, we used the pickup when you and I worked together.
At each other. Imagine doing that these days, throwing blocks at each other. So you're trying to.
Just making sure.
We used to literally throw not at each other, to each other, throw blocks, but as Andy would talk about as well, I mean, you got to be ready. You just got it done.
See, when I started on the Kovaz show, I was the kid. I'm 21 years old, and there might have been one or two other younger guys, but all the people that were there year after year were 37 and up, and they didn't take any crap from you. You did what they told you to do, or else.
That's how I ran my show.
I was 21. I was 21 when you met me. You must have thought I hope I earned my keep back then. I knew to keep my mouth shut, though. I learned 3 stunts right away.
I called it earlier. I was like, he was a young punk then. And he goes, yeah, he was.
Me? Oh, nice try. That was off the scene. On the track, I was professional.
Because I remember help loading the motorcycle on the Kovaz show, and I put it in gear so it wouldn't. And Billy Little saw me put that bike. He said, if I ever see you do that again, I'll kick your ass. He said,
you're not allowed to put it in gear?
Because it rocking back and forth on the truck, it mess up the transmission.
Okay.
Or that's what
they thought.
Yeah. That was that old Allstate.
I was gonna say maybe some old bike.
It was an old bike. It didn't hold any oil. I didn't check the oil. One time I finally checked the oil in it, and there wasn't a drop on the little dipstick. So I put some oil. It had dual exhaust, this old Allstate. So I filled it up to the full mark. I fired that sucker up. It came out like spray. It just sprayed it right out. It didn't hold any oil anymore.
So what'd you do?
I just left it like that with no oil. When we stopped using that bike,
and shut it off.
When we stopped using that bike, I was at the warehouse down in Florida, and I took it across the street and tried to blow it up because I had a little race course made in sand. Yep. I couldn't even blow that bike up; it just would not stop running.
We did demo derby. One of our friends used to be a repo guy, so we could get all these cars, and my friends would buy them, and then they would just run into each other and shit.
In Jersey?
Yeah, and they have a bunch of land down the meadows. The guy I work for, Jeff, and they took one car and they put a cinder block on the pedal. And that thing ran until it finally heat seized.
We used to have bets. You bet.
And he would
wait. Mark it would be.
He would wait, and then fire it back up like 5 minutes. Throw the block back on. They did it like 3 times. Finally, the exhaust is just glowing red. It's like shooting carbon out of the back of the exhaust. But it fired back up literally 4 times.
Never did that. I've seen 50-50s for a fundraiser, and you guess at what mark. How long? Could be 30 seconds, 60, 2 minutes. But
dude, it was a long time.
Yeah, I remember this.
That thing sat there and ran for a long time.
And just clapped out. It was just,
But it only heat seized. Like I said, they let it sit there for 5 minutes, fired it back up, put the thing back on,
on the Kovas show, we had to drive in a convoy. We had to follow the ramp. It was a big box truck that the ramps went in and had a tire rack over the cab where all the new tires, extra tires went. And it wasn't a fast truck. It was like a 2-ton box truck. And we had to follow that, and we weren't allowed, and I was pulling the bunkhouse until I rolled that the second year. But we weren't allowed to stop and sleep anywhere. We had to go to the next fair, no matter whether it was 200 or 500 miles away, before we could sleep. That was the rule.
There was some jumps, man. I got privy to that in my first couple of years that you just went with it. And again, I don't know if kids it's hard to find the help to do that. If you book those shows, right? People don't want to. It's just a tough call. Like you got to go with
jumps. That's how circus is.
Absolutely, yeah, I'm sure.
It's just
it's especially if it's a 1-night deal or 2 nights or 3 nights. You got the next show. You got to set up and do the next show. But again, we were just, and if it was a band, they would have the stage crew or their roadies, and they would help load in and out. And the members maybe would get more rest. But being in a thrill show, auto thrill show, you're everything, right? You're taking your logbook and doing it illegally just to say that you were not on track. You were actually working all day, then you were driving down the road, and that's double dipping, whatever. But you got it done, and then you slept when you could, and you woke up, and you took glass out of a junker, and then you did another show that night. But you knew, like, in 4 or 5 days, you could have 2 days off. So it kept you kind of going through it. But you would be at a kind of a high after a show. You were excited. You got stuff done. No one got hurt. Everything's... nothing got dented, I should say. The boss was happy, so you were ready to go, and then you would crash at like midnight. From like 10 o'clock you're on the road after 8 o'clock show, and 12 o'clock you're like, I got to go 3 more hours. It sucks.
Yeah.
But you did it. You just did it, right?
I found a few schedules from the 70s at home, and sometimes I think we went for almost a month without a day off. Wow. And we were in a different town every night.
Crunch those numbers.
And I'm thinking, I don't even know how
made good money.
Did that.
Yeah, somebody made good money. But I don't want to do that shit anymore.
No.
That's how circus is.
I don't want to drive at night. I don't want to sleep in a car.
Even Myrtle Beach, you would come from Georgia to do that, and then you had other gigs, and then...
that was one day. So Chris and I, we did Eve of Destruction every Wednesday at Myrtle Beach for 3 years.
Yes, it was 3 years. I want to say I was there for 3 years.
The last year I wasn't there very much.
There. You were too expensive. You were too. They'll know. They remember.
We called the show. The first year was Eve of Destruction. Then every year after that was called Bigger, Faster, Better, Cheaper.
Farther, higher,
but cheaper.
Wait, what else can you guys do? Skid plate racing. You want to drive bus and do a rollover?
They used to
do a car jump.
They used to try to pressure me into backflipping. They'd be like, you can't flip this. You don't got it anymore, and this, that. And I'm like, I flip every other show.
Because
guess what? They pay.
That's kind of true. And you would do it. You would every now and then.
I didn't ever flip there.
Who
did? What's his name did?
I know he did. Something with an S. Guys in Florida. Somebody did. He was.
How many years did you do the backflip?
Kenny Steinke.
Yeah.
How many years did you do the backflip on bikes?
10 years.
10 years?
Yeah. Everything.
So I was always jealous, though. We would do the Wednesday night show. Clint was towards the finale of the show, right? Maybe it was a 2-hour show, and you were like an hour 40 in when you would do 10 jumps.
Yeah.
We set up the ramps together as a kind of an intermission. Car ramp, bike ramp, landing ramp, takeoff, whatever. And then you would do your act, jump a couple times, and then I was already doing stuff for an hour. With Tim Chitwood.
Because he did like 4 stunts.
He was napping. I had to wake him up.
And all we did was jump. Did we jump twice?
Man, probably 3 times.
No, I mean different segments. We just went out once? I think we rode maybe.
Nice try. No, it was once. No way. It was once.
Okay, we rode once.
You did a bunch of them, but...
for like whatever 5 minutes.
Then you left the ramps on the track, and then because I was jumping on
we used to set the landing up. We'd come from like the skirt where it was flat, and then go like up the bank on an angle.
Man, that was tricky for all of us.
It was, and then a lot of them, we had the cars out there on the speedway with their headlights on the takeoff ramp.
That would happen.
Because it was too dark, there was no light there. So we had the headlights from cars on the takeoff ramp. Which anybody's jumped freestyle, it's like you have like basically a second, not even, you have a split second to like hit the ramp and jump off.
Yeah.
And if you can't see anything.
And then there were times, listen, it was South Carolina. Those storms would come in quickly. And I mean, it left puddles. You couldn't,
that was every week. Every week.
But you didn't cancel a lot. I mean, you were there. Obviously, either way, you were there. But there was a time you set up the ramps and it just couldn't happen. Maybe you couldn't wait an hour. The people weren't going to wait an hour.
Yeah, once or twice probably. But other than that, most of the time.
Most of the time. They had leaf blowers out there.
It would rain
they would blow off the ramps for Clint.
Almost without fail, like 4 or 5 o'clock, we'd get like a downpour. Maybe later than that. 6 o'clock, right before show.
Same as like,
just get some huge downpour.
Yeah, it would come through.
We were at Malone one year with Malone, New York, with the Kochman show, and it just started to downpour. Well, we had 4 or 5 cars for rolling and demolition, so we ended up using that. We had the show in the rain, but we used the junk cars, and we just smashed together and everything. I mean, Pete Gross put me out right away. I made it like 2 laps, and then he smashed into me, and that was the end of my car. But the people loved it because it was just mud and
something. There were times we did just crashes. I remember Charlie was getting paid either way kind of thing, so you already prepped the cars. It was a slick track to have Toyotas on there. You couldn't do anything with them, but you would do the crashes and roll one and jump one, make it work, maybe a fire stunt, but nothing precision like where you needed to not go off the track.
And have nice cars. You could do it in the junkers.
That's what I mean. Yeah, no, you were all over the place. These red clay tracks are slick as crap.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, to this day, you can't. But they don't know that part, You're going to get booed either way.
What, crowd? Yeah, that's when people, like, when it's windy, and I'm like, we shouldn't jump. And they're like, just jump it once. And I'm like, if I don't die, right, then everybody's like, well, that was easy. Why do you keep jumping? Like, you just can't jump it at all.
Yourself in the air.
Yeah. You're like, that was sketchy. And then everybody's like, cool. All right, keep jumping. You're like, fuck.
Where's your landing ramp now? That
gone.
Mobile landing.
Which one?
One I knew of.
The truck?
Yeah.
So it
scrapped?
Broke down at some track in Tennessee. I couldn't get it.